If used properly, a great plot twist can be utterly transformative, and it can get to the point where it overshadows everything else that came before it. Even in a poor film, a good twist can sometimes distract from all of those plot holes and boring characters that had preceded it. But sometimes, a good plot twist just isn't enough. I'm Ben from Whatculture, and here are 10 brilliant plot twists that couldn't quite save terrible movies. Number 10. Sphere. The sphere manifests their subconscious thoughts. After being tasked with investigating an alien craft found underwater, a team of scientists discover a perfect floating sphere in its cargo hold. They soon find their own habitat assaulted by impossibly giant sea creatures, coupled with messages on their computer from an entity that goes by Jerry. Realizing they all entered the sphere at some point, they reason that the sphere is manifesting their deepest fears, and they discover that Jerry is actually Harry, who is unknowingly communicating with them while he sleeps. Unfortunately, because the movie struggles with an identity crisis, the twist fails to stick. The reveal of the sphere's power offers huge potential considering its psychological relation to the characters, but the boring characters instead focus more on the generic action the sphere provides rather than its emotional repercussions. Number 9. The butterfly effect. Evan kills himself in the womb. When Evan realizes that he can revisit the traumatic moments of his past and redo them, he begins to change the future. Understandably, his actions have negative reverberations and often result in his and his friends' lives being worse off than before. To solve this problem, he removes himself by traveling back to the womb and strangling himself with his own umbilical cord, thus nullifying all of his actions. In either version, director's cut or normal, the film simply feels overly elaborate and beyond that, extremely unpleasant. The traumas Evan undergoes are necessary to the plot but are just not fun to watch, no matter if they're erased or not. The off-putting content of the film is unfortunate because the idea of Ashton Kutcher saving the day by killing himself in the womb is just crazy enough to be fascinating. Number 8. Vanilla Sky. Half of the movie is a dream. When David falls for Sophia, his ex, Julie, gets jealous and tries to kill him in a car crash. Left disfigured, his world begins to fall apart and he begins hallucinating that Julie is in his life instead of Sophia. Recalling something from his visions, David visits the offices for life extension and is told that he was placed in a lucid dream after he had killed himself 150 years earlier. Over time, the dream had since gone wrong. David's subconscious had been inserted in place of what he wanted to imagine, so he's offered the choice to reset the dream or to wake up. He chooses the latter and upon jumping off a building is told to open his eyes. However, Vanilla Sky is borderline incoherent and features a rare Tom Cruise performance, which isn't very good. Plus, perhaps its only redeeming quality beyond Cameron Diaz's fearsome acting was the twist. Number 7. The Tourist. Frank is really Alexander Pierce. Alexander Pierce, responsible for stealing billions from a gangster and owing hundreds of millions in taxes, has disappeared, leaving instructions for his lover to board a train and find a man who police will believe is him. She picks out Frank Tupelo and they begin a tryst across Venice, dodging both the police and the gangsters looking for Pierce. Fun. When everyone catches up to them, Frank reveals his true identity by correctly opening Pierce's safe and returning the money he owed to the government. This entire film looked like it should have worked on paper. It was supposed to be a fun caper with two of the world's biggest stars, but instead it was a convoluted mess unsure of itself, starring two actors with no chemistry. Number 6. The World Is Not Enough. Elektra is working with Renard. After being taken hostage by the terrorist Renard, oil heiress Elektra King is released upon payment, but she later reveals to M that she had been working with Renard since her abduction. Her plan was to have Renard blow up the Russian oil pipeline in Istanbul so her own would increase in value. Now, in the history of Bond films, there's only been one lead female antagonist, and even then, she was supported by a fearsome henchman. Elektra marked the first undeniable female lead villain, which was only compounded by the fact that she was also Bond's love interest. Having him unceremoniously execute her was an incredibly dark turn for the character that offered some real emotion and development. All this from a movie so ridiculous that it featured Denise Richards as a nuclear scientist named Christmas Jones. Number 5. Unknown. Liam Neeson is a hitman who got amnesia on a mission. After being involved in a car crash before attending a biotech summit, Dr. Martin Harris wakes up to find that his life has been taken over by another man. His wife, Liz, claims not to recognize him, and the other Martin has now replaced him in all of their family photos. After nearly being assassinated, his mentor Rodney reveals to him that he is an assassin and that Martin Harris was a cover identity created for this mission. After the crash, he accidentally woke up to believe that he really was Harris. It's fun to think about how Liam Neeson has become a bona fide action star, but you also have to remember that it occasionally means we get a generic action bore like Unknown. None of the action or characters pop, and ultimately, amnesia is far-fetched at best. Number 4. What lies beneath? Harrison Ford is the killer. After Claire starts seeing the ghost of a young woman in her new home, she thinks she's going crazy, as you would. She soon starts to suspect, however, that the girl has been murdered by her shadowy neighbor. Upon further investigation, she discovers the identity of the girl to be one of her husband Norman's former students. He reveals that after an affair with the girl, she threatened to expose him to the dean, so in a panic, he killed her and proceeded to try and kill Claire as well. Harrison Ford is the go-to guy for heroes, so when it's revealed that he's actually a remorseless killer, it came completely out of left field. Unfortunately, those final 20 minutes can't make up for the uneven ride to get there. There are scares sprinkled throughout, but the narrative feels unfocused, and no evil Harrison Ford can make up for that. Number 3. Identity. The entire thing is playing out in the mind of a killer. After a series of strangers are stuck at a motel during a storm, they start getting picked off one by one. With the suspects dwindling, Ed begins to notice a series of strange coincidences, but before he can put it all together, he finds himself impossibly transported into a courthouse in the body of Malcolm Rivers, a serial killer on trial. Ed is told that he is one of Malcolm's multiple personalities and that what's transpiring at the motel is a manifestation of their efforts to eliminate the hostile personality. Returning into Malcolm's mind, the true killer is revealed to be Timmy, a little boy who kills the remaining survivors and takes over Rivers' mind as the lone personality. This twist is so insanely crazy that it almost makes the film worthwhile all on its own. The problem is that the first portion of the twist comes way too early in the film, and it quickly devolves into a generic slasher upon us learning that it's all in the killer's head. Number 2. The Skeleton Key. Caroline was groomed to be Mama Cecile's new host. Papa Justify and Mama Cecile, two hoodoo-practicing slaves, transferred their souls into their house's 2 children before dying. Years later, Caroline has been tasked with taking care of the catatonic Benjamin in the same house, and after becoming suspicious of his wife Violet, she confides in Luke. He then reveals himself to be the current host of Papa Justify, who had, until recently, been inhabiting Benjamin. Caroline's entire stay had been a ploy to get her to believe in hoodoo. Spells can only work on someone who believes in them, after all, at which point, Violet, really Mama Cecile, transfers into her body. Despite creating a strong and unique atmosphere of hoodoo magic, the film never delivered on the scares it promised. The twist finally resulted in some real magical terror towards Caroline, but at that point, there hadn't been enough to justify us sticking around to get there. Number 1. Pandorum. Dennis Quaid is crazy, and they already landed. Peyton spends the majority of the film listening to horrific tales of Gallo playing God on their Ark-like spaceship. Terrifyingly, it's then revealed that Gallo is a hallucination of Peyton's younger self. After getting bored of torturing the ship's residents, Gallo went back into hypersleep and forgot everything he did, waking up decades later as Peyton. But before the once again crazy Peyton/Gallo could wreak further havoc, it turns out the ship had already completed its mission. They'd been underwater for the entire film, having landed on their new planet over 900 years earlier. Despite a nicely manic lead performance from Ben Foster, the entire film was cliched with science fiction tropes, on top of being not scary at all. It couldn't tell if it wanted to be a science fiction film or a horror film, and it failed to adequately do either. And that's our list. Make sure you subscribe to the Whatculture YouTube channel for more lists like this, and don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. I'm Ben from Whatculture, and thanks for watching.
Oh, hello there. I'm billionaire philanthropist, not Bruce Wayne, and as you may have heard, we've actually started up a Whatculture comics channel. Oh, that's better. Where you can go for all the comics lists, all the comics news, and all the comics discussion. So go and subscribe to Whatculture Comics for loads of amazing comics coverage.